You've probably learned that many invertebrates have what we call an open circulatory system. So here's a good schematic here, and the red arrows showing the directionality of blood flow. So I just wanted to very quickly introduce you to the open circulatory system. And of course, you probably would have learned that all of the organs of an insect are bathed in blood. And that's because of this open circulatory system where the oxygen is being delivered directly into the system, directly into the cells, and then taking carbon dioxide away. So, in a weird way, the insects don't necessarily require the internalized liquid, the hemolymph, to do that for it, right? Because that's being taken care of by a separate system. The only reason an insect requires a system that circulates a fluid through the animal is, of course, to maintain its hydrostatic skeleton, but then we can deliver nutrients. So we have the tracheal system responsible for oxygen exchange, but we have the hemolymph system, right, which is the circulatory system that is independent of the respiratory system in this case. And the circulatory system here focuses on storing the water, storing proteins, storing various metabolic byproducts. It's a really dynamic reservoir, right? So it contributes to balance, osmotic balance for the animal, but also waste management in terms of the waste from the metabolic waste from metabolic activity, but not carbon dioxide. That's taken care of by the tracheal system, right? Importantly, also, it is the fluid, right? Remember, because it's a fluid, right? It can also move things quickly, not as quickly as in gases, but definitely still move things quite well. And in the context of insects, it's the medium for hormonal signaling, so the endocrine system, right? So it distributes the hormones by released by any of the neurohemal organs. And you've probably learned in BIOL3205 something called the corpora cardiaca, right? Which is near the dorsal vessel of the animal. And this allows for systematic sort of coordination, right, of all of the physiological systems, right? So that's one function of the hemolymph. Now, another thing about the hemolymph is pigment, right? When you squish a little caterpillar, sometimes it bursts out and it's green, right? Remember, they don't need red blood cells because red blood cells help organisms like us carry oxygen. I don't need to do that in an insect because the oxygen is not carried by anything. I'm just taking oxygen directly from the air, right? But in the context of insects, I don't need a transporter for oxygen, right? But I still have pigment in my blood, in my hemolymph, because pigment has many roles in things like the immune response, in detoxifying things, and also in signaling, right? And in some cases, you can actually visually see the hemolymph through a very translucent cuticle, right? So that's really the advantage of having a hemolymph. Now, just another feature, and this is a picture that you will see in your online material, the presence of this pulsatile organ. There's a dedicated paragraph talking a little bit more about this, but in a weird way, you can think of it as a little valve because ultimately, insects, yes, even though the open circulatory system is meant to reach all parts of the insects, some parts, including parts where they are quite resistant to pressure, would benefit from a little valve to keep pushing it along. So things like the wings, things like the limbs, and things like the antennae are always associated with what we call a pulsatile organ.